Hello, good afternoon. All right, I'm just getting ready to share the screen here. Well, Happy New Year to everybody. This is our first meeting for this year, for the year of 2025, and I want you all to think of thriving in 225. Let's thrive in 225. I have that idea in my mind as well, that goal, and I want to be able to extend that to you as well if that's something that you are interested in. But together, let's go through this year and let's make this year different and better than it was in the previous year or the past year. So one of the things that I realize that's really going to make that happen and really make this year different than the past year is just making sure that we are doing things differently. That's the big thing. If you're doing the same thing the same way, before you know it, it's going to be December and you would not have really experienced much changes. So it's really important to be thinking about doing things differently. So speaking of doing things differently, I have decided, I've come up with a new title, a new name, for my program, and it's going to be called Exceedingly Abundantly. Exceedingly Abundantly, because I want to experience life more exceedingly abundantly, and I would love to be able to teach you how to do the same. And honestly, that title was inspired by a verse in the Bible. So I'm going to read that really quick right now. It comes from Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Some of you might be familiar with that. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, and it says, "Now unto him," meaning God, "that is able to do exceeding," some versions say exceedingly abundantly, "above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us," or that he works in us. So, what do you think about that you would like to accomplish, or what do you think about that you would like to see differently in your life? So here he is willing to do these things that you want above and beyond what you even think. So isn't that good news? Isn't that encouraging? So I just love the title Exceedingly Abundantly, because it just gives you hope, and it gives you something to be able to look forward to. And life can be better, and you can feel better physically, you can feel better mentally, but there's just a way to go about doing it, or we have to learn how to do that. So I hope that as I take you through this year, and as we go through this year together, that I can help to give you some tips and ideas or things to think about, things to try, things to implement to help you experience life more exceedingly abundantly. So again, my name is Joanne McDermott. I am a functional nutrition counselor and a family nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. And these meetings take place the second and fourth Saturday of the month at 3 p.m. And that is Central Standard Time, or the time that is in Texas, Central United States. So today, well, before I get into what we're going to talk about today, let me throw in this little disclaimer. I want you all to know that this information provided here is to increase health awareness. This is not intended to replace your doctor, your therapist, or any health practitioner that you may be seeing or have seen, or that you're working with or have worked with. Having an understanding of your physical and mental capacities not only creates more options in your health care, but it also empowers you to become a part of your health plan, right? So the more you know, the more you can be a part of making those decisions as far as what you want to do to be able to help yourself. And then the more you understand and the more you are able to help yourself, because who knows you better than you? Nobody knows you better than you, and nobody knows how you feel better than how you feel. So the more you understand, the more you know, the more you can be a part, of your health plan. And that's empowering, isn't it? So today we are going to be talking about blood sugar, or I should say, for the month of January, we're going to be talking about blood sugar. So what is blood sugar? Blood sugar, sometimes it's called glucose. The doctor might say, okay, I'm going to do some blood work to test your glucose. So glucose, blood sugar, it's the same thing. So blood sugar is actually measuring the amount or the concentration of sugar that's in your bloodstream, right? So what is blood sugar? All right, so there's 3 ways in which we test the amount of sugar that is in our system. One way is just the blood test. And some of you, or many of you, might be familiar with this little machine here. So they prick your finger, just a little prick enough so that, we can get some blood to be exposed and coming out of your finger. We squeeze the finger a little bit, and then we apply that blood onto that paper stick there, right? And then we plug it into the machine. So that's pretty instant method that is used, and it can give the results right away. And sometimes we take it while you're after you have fasted. Sometimes you might just take it right away, especially if you're going to go do a doctor's checkup, or maybe if you go into the clinic without an appointment, or an ER, they might just take your blood sugar. In that sense, it's not going to be fasting. But it's still a way for us to be able to measure your blood sugar. So one way of measuring it is through your blood, getting an instant drop right away. Another way, also measuring it through the blood, is called the A1C, but this is when blood is actually drawn from your arm. They put it in a little tube there, and they take it to the lab. And what they're doing is it requires a little bit more time to be able to evaluate your blood there. And what they're doing is they are checking to see, obviously they're checking to see how much sugar is in your blood. So they're looking at your red blood cells, because within the red blood cells is a certain protein, and that protein is called hemoglobin. And that hemoglobin is also known to carry oxygen. That's how the oxygen travels around your body. But anyway, so the protein connects with the sugar, or I should say the sugar, that's in your blood. It's broken down into smaller molecules called glucose. And those sugar molecules connect to the protein molecules that are in your red blood cells. That just happens all the time. And that is something, that's something that just happens naturally. It happens all the time. But obviously the more sugar that is in your bloodstream, that's flowing through your bloodstream, the more sugar molecules that are going to be attached to your protein molecules. So what they're doing is when they take the blood and they look at it in the lab, they're looking to see what the percentage or how much sugar molecules is connected to the protein molecules. And of course they're looking for that to be a certain number. And that gives them an indication of whether you're having too much, or you have an excess, or you're where you should be, as far as the amount of sugar in your blood. So they call this the A1C, and that's another way. Actually, this way is a little bit more accurate than the immediate, reading that you get from pricking the finger, because it tells us how much sugar is in your system over a period of 2 to 3 months. We know that because your red blood cells actually last about 2 to 3 months, and we're constantly making new cells, including our red blood cells. And so the red blood cells only last about 2 to 3 months. And so that's why when we're looking at those red blood cells and seeing the sugar molecules connected to the protein, when we know that, okay, this blood cell has been around for about 2 to 3 months. And so that's why it also gives us a more accurate reading as to the level of sugar in your blood. Because the other way that I showed you here, that really is just testing how much sugar is in your blood at that moment. And obviously, if you've eaten breakfast, or even whether you've just eaten before you've gone to the doctor here, or gone to the medical facility here, or if you have eaten 3 hours ago or 5 hours ago, it's really going to be different. The reading is going to be different than if you didn't eat over several hours, like 12 hours. So the A1C here really is giving us a measurement based on the last 2 to 3 months. So this is definitely a lot more accurate, I would say. So let's just kind of look at these numbers for a moment here and find out, what's considered a normal blood sugar level or what is too high. And when your doctor may tell you that you're either diabetic or pre-diabetic. But again, I'm just kind of giving you a general chart here. I don't want you to go and diagnose yourself or say that I've diagnosed you, because it's really going to be your doctor that's going to have to give you that diagnosis, because he's seeing you and he's going to be able to evaluate you a lot more closely than I can, or that this video can right now. So I just want you to be aware of that. But so this is just to kind of give you an idea. So when you are doing the finger prick that I showed, and that machine is going to spit out a number. So if you're looking at the green right there, if you are fasting, all right, so let's say usually they consider the fasting anywhere from 8 hours to 12 hours. So 8 hours on. So if fasting, meaning you haven't eaten anything for the last 8 hours, and they go and they prick your finger, put that little piece of paper there, and they put it into the machine, and then they want to see that it is reading between 80 and 100. Okay, I've kind of seen 70 and 90 as well. So again, it depends on your doctor, depends on you. But for the sake of this chart, they want to be, if it's between like 80 to 100, then that's normal. Now, let's say that you did eat something within 8 hours. So 5 hours ago, you had breakfast, and they test your blood, with the little pricking your finger there, and it's reading, the machine reads 170 to 200. Then again, that is considered okay. You're within the normal range, all right? Not a whole lot of concern there. And then so after eating, so that would be more immediately after you, pretty close to immediately after eating, or not too long, after eating. And then, but let's say that 2 to 3 hours has gone by after you've eaten. So yeah, it's going to be the range is going to be a little bit lower, because, some of that sugar would have gotten out of your system. All right, so all of that green there is normal. Now, let's say we do that same finger prick test, and the machine spits out the number between 101 and 125. If you're fasting or not fasting, you've eaten, and it's as high as between 190 and 230. So that's when they're going to start getting concerned, and they may want to do more tests. They want to do the more diagnostic tests, or the A1C that I was just talking about that gives a more accurate record. And then, of course, now, if you are fasting and the number comes up 126 or above, then they're going to most likely say that, okay, you know what, you fall under the classification of diabetes. After eating between 220 and 300, you know, pretty high. So this is, again, this is just to kind of give you an overview and just to get an idea. We want our blood sugar levels to exist and be there, but we don't want it to be too high. So again, this is just the finger prick test. If you are doing your A1C, and you usually get a printout of your lab work. So the doctors are usually looking for numbers. They want it to be below 6.0. So once you start to get to, so like 5.7, 5.9, but once you start to get to 6 or above your A1C reading, that's when they start to get concerned. And they most likely will have a conversation with you about that and what to do about that. So another way in which the blood sugar levels are measured is by the urine. And this is usually a test that is done on pregnant women, because a lot of times when women become pregnant, they have that tendency for their blood sugar to go up. You know, a lot of changes happening in the body, and they're just not able to deal with the sugar, you know, in their body as well as they could before their pregnancy. So it's a standard test. They usually give it, I think it's maybe around maybe month 6, maybe month 5, and they will tell the pregnant lady, okay, we're going to test your blood sugar right now. And so they have you urinate in a cup, and then they use that stick there, dip it in, and they're looking to see for any color changes. So if it ends up being blue here, then you know it's negative. And then as the color gets darker, then it's an indication of sugar being in your urine. So what happens is that there's a higher concentration of sugar in the blood. Now, our blood travels through our kidneys, and the kidneys is what makes the urine. So, but what happens is the kidney is just not able to filter out all of the sugar that's in the blood, because you know there's more sugar there, and our body's just not able to process it in the same way. So they call it that the sugar is spilling over into the urine. So really the kidneys is just not able to filter it out, you know, as efficiently, and because you know there's just more there, and so there's sugar that ends up being present in the urine, and they're able to test it out using the stick there. And if it does have show an indication of an elevated level, again, your doctor, gynecologist is going to have a conversation and talk about, okay, what can we do here? They do get a little bit concerned about that sometimes when a woman does have diabetes during her pregnancy. They call that gestational diabetes. And a lot of times when the baby is born, the baby is big. It's huge. It's weighing like 9 pounds. Average is maybe anywhere from 6 to 8 pounds. But when you get to be 9 pounds or 10 pounds, a huge baby, usually that's an indication of the mom having some sugar that was present in her urine or in her body, extra sugar and flowing through her blood. So I know I've just explained here about sugar in our blood. We don't want it to be too high, some of the complications that it can cause, but I am here to tell you today that sugar is our friend. Sugar is actually our friend, and I'm going to prove that to you right now. Now, sugar, when the sugar that our body uses it's called glucose. Well, there's other forms of sugar as well, but when they're measuring your blood sugar, they also call it blood glucose. Glucose is a simple form of sugar. It's a simple molecule because there's different foods that we eat, mainly like your carbohydrates. So you can see a little description here. Glucose comes from food that contains carbohydrates. So what are carbohydrates? They're any foods that has starches in it. There are sugar, rice, pasta, bread, cakes, basically anything that is flour or that's used as a flour. We grind it up, and now today there's rice flour. So those are your carbohydrates. And these foods, your breads and your cakes, those are high, or rice as well, pasta, those are foods that are high carbohydrates. Just about every food has carbohydrate in it, but some have a very small quantity of it, and some have a very large quantity of it, such as your breads, cakes, pasta, and rice. So the carbohydrates, when we eat it and it mixes with the saliva and the digestive enzymes within our body, it breaks down that carbohydrates into a more simpler form, which is sugar. It breaks it down into the small sugar molecules, and one of those sugar molecules is glucose. By the way, anything that ends with a ose, O-S-E, is a type of sugar. Okay, so let me continue to explain why sugar is good for us. So we eat the carbohydrate, breaks it down into glucose. Then the mouth, the stomach, and the small intestines, okay, they break down the food into glucose. Yeah, I just said that. So the glucose enters into the bloodstream, right, from the small intestine. So it goes from our mouth to our stomach to our small intestines. From our small intestines, it goes into our bloodstream. And then the blood carries the glucose to the muscles and to the brain. Why is sugar being carried to our muscles and to our brain? Because, so this is a picture of a cell right here, and as the glucose goes into the cell, there's a lot of activity, a lot of transactions, a lot of functioning activity that's happening within that cell, and it eventually creates energy. That energy is also called ATP. So the carbon dioxide and the water are just like byproducts that end up resulting from all the activity that's going on as the cell uses the glucose to produce energy. So the sugar, or the glucose, actually produces energy, and that energy makes our muscles work, so we're able to get up and move around, and it also makes our brain work so that we're able to think and process information and learn. So this is what sugar does. And if we did not have this sugar, then we would not have the energy for our muscles to move around or for our brain to work properly. Think about this for a moment. Do you know why you feel hungry? We all get hungry at times. It is your body's way of telling you that your cells need energy. Cells use energy to carry out chemical activities that allow them to live, to grow, and to reproduce. Also to give you energy. Okay, so another reason how we know that sugar is our friend is because in the first book of Genesis, and I'm sorry, I forgot to write the verse there, but I'm looking it up right now. In the very first book of the Bible called Genesis, and in chapter 1, there is a description there of the food that was provided for man, for Adam and Eve. Do you remember that story? And so it's in verse 29. I just found it here, and it says, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of the tree a yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. Meat meaning food. Okay, so the very food that God gave, it was items that had seed. So you took the seed, you planted it, and then it grew, and it produced a fruit. And that fruit produced more seeds. So the food was basically anything that had seed and grew, which is our fruits and our vegetables, right? But also our legumes and even our grains. Well, it's obvious, it's easier to visualize our fruits and our vegetables. They all have seeds in it, right? You think of an apple, you've seen an apple seed. You think of maybe even a tomato and a cucumber. But you know what? I'm thinking more of the apple and the orange. You know, they have seeds in them. And so in the beginning, it seems like the only food were just the fruits. They were just fruits. I understand. I believe that the vegetables didn't come until after the fall of man. That's when, Adam and Eve, they were given instructions. Okay, you can eat anything here in the garden, but don't eat of this tree. And then, unfortunately, the fruit looked very appealing, and they were tempted, by the enemy, Satan. And so they ended up eating that forbidden fruit. Unfortunately, cast out of the Garden of Eden, and then God said that, okay, from now on, Adam, when you work, you're not going to be able to eat until you experience the sweat of your brow. And just kind of seems like that's when vegetables came into place, because now our gardening is a lot of work. Anybody had a garden before? It's a lot of work in tending to the garden. Whereas if you think about a fruit tree, once you got that tree going, there wasn't as much to do there. Maybe just prune it, make sure you water it. But I would say the fruit tree is a lot easier to take care of rather than the vegetable. And the vegetable seems like you have to always go plant it every year. You got to start from afresh every year. Whereas your tree, once you get it going, it's there. You don't have to start it all over again. So anyway, but our first foods were fruits. And what do we know about fruits? Are they salty? They're not salty, they're sweet. Fruits actually have sugar inside of them. The sugar inside the fruit is called fructose. Remember I said anything with a O-S-E is sugar. So the very, 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 very first food that God provided for man when he was first created on this earth was a sugary food. And some of those fruits are very sweet. Right? You think about dates and bananas. Apples can be very sweet too. So, if God created sugar-laden foods for us, then the sugar must be okay, right? Now, what about the breast milk? Talking about the very first food for man, what is the very first food that a baby consumes? The breast milk, the mom's breast milk. Now, mind you, I think like the first week or two, it's more colostrum, it's more of a clear liquid. That's just kind of the beginnings. But then after that first week or two, then comes in the actual milk production. And that is maintained for, some babies, toddlers, are breastfed for up until their second birthday. But let's look at the composition of the breast milk. So you can kind of look at this. Looks like a teardrop. So right at the bottom here, this white part, that represents lactose. So the breast milk, the composition of it, says it's 71 grams GL. I'm not sure what that is, but it's 71. And that is, so it has that much lactose in it. Remember what I told you about anything that end in OSE? O-S-E? What is that? It's a type of sugar. We learned about glucose. I had mentioned fructose, the sugar from the fruit, and now there's lactose. So lactose is the sugar that is found in the milk from mammals, I would say, right? Because as human beings, we are considered mammals, and animals such as your cow is a mammal because they nurse, they're young, and the milk that comes from the cow, we call that lactose as well, right? Some of us are lactose intolerant, meaning that our body is just not able to break down the sugar, within the milk, so our bodies aren't able to digest it, and sometimes it can cause very, very uncomfortable stomach cramps. All right, so the lactose is the sweet or the sugary part of the milk, and a majority of it is sugar, and then you have another small part, about half the amount of the lactose or the sugar is your fat, a little bit more than almost cut right in half, and then there's a small amount of protein, and then even less is vitamins and minerals. So a big majority of that breast milk is actually sugar. The very, very, very first food that a baby eats, the first weeks of his life or the first months of his life, he's eating a huge concentration of sugar. Now, what would you think is going to be the best food for a baby? Do you think it would be better for that baby to have the breast milk, or do you think it would be better for the baby to have the formula? Now, some people, they don't have a choice. They have to use the formula, so this is not to make anybody feel guilty or bad or anything like that, but I'm just trying to point out an example here that, isn't it interesting that our bodies are created in such a way that the food provided for our babies is primarily sugar. So why is that? Why? It's natural. So sugar is a natural nutrient, a natural food that our body needs. But in all honesty, sugar can also be our foe. So I just explained to you how it's our friend, but it can also be our foe. And the idea here is to have a balance, right? Practicing temperance and just making sure there's a balance in the amount of sugar that we take in. So how is sugar our foe? So let me explain this process again. I had explained earlier that the cells use that sugar to make energy. So let's just kind of go through this process right now. So remember, we consume carbohydrates, right? So that's your rice, your bread, and any of your sweets. Potato, even our legumes or beans, they have carbohydrates in it. Okay, the digestive enzymes break down, as we chew, it breaks down this food into smaller molecules or glucose, right? And then that glucose enters into our bloodstream. So glucose is represented by this blue. It's in our bloodstream now. And then that glucose actually enters inside the cells. Remember I was talking about that? And then the cells use that glucose to make energy. And again, that's what helps us to be able to move. That's what helps us to be able to think. That's what helps us to be. So our cells is using it up, burning it up. Now, if there is any excess glucose flowing through our bodies, through our bloodstream, that our body ends up not using, it goes and puts it aside and stores it for later use. And it stores it around our liver. Excess glucose is stored in the liver. And it's also stored in our muscles. Okay, so that comes in handy because sometimes we don't get a chance to eat, or we are eating late, and our body still is going to need some energy, in order to continue functioning. So it will tap into the the storages of the glucose that was in our liver, and it'll use it up. It'll make it go back to the cells so the cells can use it to make energy, and then we're able to continue doing what we're doing even though we're hungry. Now, sometimes the storage units, that's around our liver get so filled up with that excess sugar, there's no more space to be able to store any sugar around our liver, so then it needs to go to another place excuse me, to store that extra sugar. So now it starts to get stored in our fat cells, right? Fat gets transferred to our fat cells for longer storage, and this is a type of fat storage. This is a type of storage that we don't want. This is what's manifested as weight gain or fat, or certain areas of your body starting to get larger than you would like it to, and it's because you're eating an excess of carbohydrates or sugar, has no place else to store it, so now it's resorting to other areas of your body to store it. This is also what is known as our triglycerides as well. That's why they want your triglycerides to be down. So this is when our sugar becomes our foe. Up to here it's good, up to here it's good, but when we start going over here, now sugar is starting to not be our friend anymore. That is happening only when there is an excess. So what you want to do is you eat the sugar, but not an excess of it. So here is an example of two men here, and let's look at the one here on the left. And okay, this is his liver right here, and it's looking normal and healthy, and you can see that he is nice and fit. But the gentleman over here to the right, looking at his liver is not looking very healthy right now. He has what's called a fatty liver because there's such an excess of fat that is on his liver because he has just been eating an excess of sugar. And you can see, looking at his body here, you can see where the weight gain is, around his, abdominal area, looking at his neck and his arms here. And again, that sugar has saturated the fat, no more place to store it. So now it's going to the parts of his body and causing him to be overweight. So, does our body need sugar? So again, does our body need sugar? The glucose, or the sugar, is the body's energy source. It is found in the food we eat. We eat that food, it breaks it down into glucose, and that our bodies convert that glucose into energy. But there's another question here. Does sugar give you energy? Sugars from natural sources are not needed for energy production. Added sugar is not essential and is not needed by the body. So what they're saying here is that do we need sugar to give us energy? Yes, we do. But do we need an excess, or do we need added sugar? So what's interesting here is, even though our bodies need sugar, you do not have to intentionally eat a teaspoon of sugar, or make sure you add sugar to your tea, or whatever food you're going to be. You don't even have to add sugar to anything, but by just eating your fruits and your vegetables and your rice and any other grain, you will get all the sugar that you need. And so there's a little indication here of how much sugar is too much sugar. So let's look at the bottom here. They're saying on an average for a man, For the day, you only need like 9 teaspoons of sugar, right? And so if 4 grams of sugar equals 1 teaspoon, then that means, right, if we do 9 times 4, you only need like 36 grams of sugar a day, for the male, and 24, for the female. So you only need 6 teaspoons of sugar a day for the female, 9 teaspoons of sugar for the male. Now, if you look on any of your the labeling, the ingredients label on any packaged food that you purchase or anything that you purchase, usually on the back of it, somewhere there, it'll have the nutrients label there, and it'll tell you like how many grams of sugar. It kind of give you a breakdown, and it'll give you a percentage, or it'll give you the amount of grams of sugar that's in that product, but it's going to tell you based on serving, and then it also tells you how much a serving is. So maybe another time I can kind of break down, how to read that. But these ingredients labels, they do tell you how much sugar is in an item, and but you could also Google and just kind of look up, okay, how much sugar is in an apple, a red apple, a green apple. Your green apple is going to have less sugar. So honestly, it does not take a whole lot for us to accumulate 6 teaspoons of sugar or 9 teaspoons of sugar. When you start to go beyond that amount, then you may have exceeded your recommended sugar intake for the day, and that's when you want to be paying attention or be careful of that, especially if you are a person that struggles with a little bit of diabetes, or you were told you're pre-diabetic. But honestly, whether we have diabetes or not, or pre-diabetic or not, we can still have too much sugar, flowing through our system. Sometimes we might have high blood sugar, which is called diabetes as well, which means you have diabetes, and not even know that we have the diabetes because we never went to the doctor, we never tested our blood sugar. So it's something that we all have to be aware of and be cautious of, because having that high blood sugar all the time does create damage within our body. So one of the ways in which we can help to manage our blood sugar levels and making sure that it's not going higher than it needs to is to ensure that the carbohydrates that you're eating are complex carbohydrates as opposed to simple carbohydrates. Your complex carbohydrates are going to be your foods that have fiber inside of it. So your high fiber foods are usually any of your foods that grow, your plant-based items. So looking in the picture here, our complex carbohydrates, it's broccoli, beans, any fruits, your bananas, apples, pears, your bread, because it's, in this case, it's whole wheat bread. So it has, all of these foods here have fiber, high fiber. Again, anything that's plant-based, in other words, it's something that is grown, it's no animal product whatsoever. They tend to be high fiber foods, your fruit and vegetables. Now, what happens is when you are eating something that has sugar in it and you consume something that additionally has fiber in it, or high fiber, that fiber just slows down the absorption of the sugar into your bloodstream. So your blood is not getting this high dose of sugar all at once. It's getting a slower dose, a more steady and even release of sugar into your bloodstream. And so now your body doesn't have to be dealing with this high blood sugar all the time. Now, on the other hand, if you eat these foods that are simple sugars, so like your white bread, But more than anything, it's your high sweet foods. It's your foods where sugar has been added. So ice cream, soda, the sweet cereal, those are simple sugars. Basically, simple carbohydrates. These simple carbohydrates have little to no fiber in it at all. So if there's no fiber to help slow down the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream, then your bloodstream gets a quick, fast, huge dose of sugar inside your blood, and then it causes your blood sugar levels to just spike up really high. And that really high spike of sugar into your bloodstream, it kind of honestly it causes a little shock to your system there. Your body is immediately sensing, oh wow, there's sugar inside the blood here. We need to get that sugar inside the cells, and we need to get it in there now. Your pancreas releases a hormone called insulin, and that insulin helps the sugar to be taken in by the cell. Without any insulin, the sugar will not go inside the cell. Remember this, the cells need the sugar to be able to get that energy. So sometimes when there's this overwhelming amount of sugar all at once, then the pancreas goes crazy, producing and shooting out a bunch of insulin inside your bloodstream there, and then your cells are just working really hard to okay, we need to get this sugar out of the bloodstream and inside of the cells. And so sometimes you can cause your pancreas to just be overworking if this is a way that you eat most of the time. If you're eating your simple carbohydrates food, and so it causes your pancreas to be working hard, pumping that insulin, and sometimes it can start to make your pancreas a little bit tired. Just like that's the way our bodies are, but that's why we get tired at nighttime. Or let's say you just ran a marathon or something, you're tired at the end of the 20 miles, or you did a workout, you're tired. So our organs get tired too, and they need a break. They need to have the opportunity to stop. That's why sleeping is so important and good. But anyway, so if the organ, or imagine if you don't get a chance to stop and rest, you kind of start to just break down. So the same thing's happening with our organs as well. Your cells also get overwhelmed because they're just taking in this sugar, because all the sugar is here. Insulin comes in. Okay, I'm opening the door. Cell, you got to take in this sugar. It overwhelms the cell. They also get tired of just taking in more sugar, that they start to become resistant to the sugar. That's what we call insulin resistance. And so sometimes when a person experiences insulin resistant, they have high blood sugars. The sugar is remaining in the bloodstream. So we do the blood test. When the blood test is done, it's going to indicate high concentration of sugar in your blood. So that's why we don't want to eat those foods that cause, that has little to no fiber in it, that causes the sugar to just be dumped, overload, all at once into our bloodstream. We want to eat the complex carbohydrates, or the foods that have a lot of fiber inside of it. So, there concludes another episode from the Exceedingly Abundantly blog, and I am very glad to have been here with you, and thank you for spending the time with me. I hope this was helpful to you. Looking forward to this new year again, and just want to remind you that my name is Joanne McDermott. I'm a functional nutrition counselor and a family nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. And we meet the second and fourth Saturday of the month at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, or Texas time. So thank you again, and I wish you a happy new year, and hope that information was helpful And the next time we meet in a couple of weeks will be the fourth Saturday, and I would love to be able to talk a little bit about, well, we're going to continue our discussion on sugar, but you know, it sometimes we go, or a lot of times we tend to go, overboard with the sugar, or we eat more than we need to. And part of that is because we just kind of tend to love it, right? We tend to be just drawn to it. And we also get, it makes us feel differently. In fact, it makes us feel better. And so I want to kind of go into that a little bit and talk about why is sugar so drawing? Why does it just like pull us? Why do we even struggle with having self-control from resisting the sugar? Why is it that when it comes to a carrot, celery, we don't seem to get addicted to that? We don't get to, if I was to tell you, okay, you know what? For a whole week, I want you to try for this entire week to not eat any carrots, not eat any celery, not eat any spinach, not eat any broccoli. I want you to let's just kind of do a little trial run here, and for the next 7 days, you don't eat any of those foods. And you would not struggle with it, most likely, right? But if I tell you, okay, for the next week, let's not eat any cakes, any cookies, any brownies, any dessert type of food. I want you to just not eat any of that. If you have your coffee or your tea, don't add any sugar to it. Don't add any creamer in it because the creamer has sugar in it. Just no sugar for 7 days. Do you think that you would be struggling to do that? So why is it that the sugar has this pull on us? There's something different about sugar than our carrots and our broccoli. What's the difference? So we're going to dive into that a little bit more, dive into that and quite a bit, and see what we can find. What makes sugar so different here? Okay, so I want to thank you again, and I wish you a great rest of your day. And I